How many of you are familiar with the concept of Corban? Anyone? You've heard that term Corban? Okay. Does anybody know what it means? What does it mean? It's a gift, but it's a sacrificial gift. It's a sacrificial offering, in other words. And so if someone were going to bring a Corban, or the sacrificial offering, where's that offering, where's it going to be placed? I'm sorry? On the altar, that's right. Because what's going to happen to that gift once it's placed on the altar? It's going to get burned up, isn't it? It's going to be consumed by the flames. And so when you consider that sacrificial offering being placed on the altar to be consumed by the flames, I'm looking for a word. What more than anything else is being consumed on the altar? Flesh. Flesh. So let's write the word Corban. Kuf, Resh, Bet, Nun. Corban. And the root of it are these three letters, karav. And karav means to draw near, to come closer to. So the idea behind Corban, or that sacrificial gift, the idea is that you want to draw closer to God. How many of you want to draw closer to God? Raise your hand. Okay, everybody in the room. Of course we all do. But here's what we need to understand. In Corban, what we see here is this. To draw close to Him requires that flesh be consumed in a fire. Our God is a consuming fire. So we've been going our own way, and at some point, whenever it was, we heard His voice. And we decided to turn around and to begin the return. That's shuv, that's teshuvah, repentance. And so now we're returning. And the closer we get to Him, ladies and gentlemen, seeing that He's a consuming fire, we're coming out of darkness into His marvelous light. And as we start to come out of the darkness, we begin to see things in the light that we've never seen before. But, we're still perhaps a little ways from the light, and, so we're seeing the effects of that light, but we're not feeling the heat of that fire just yet. But if we continue to draw closer to that fire, it's just like if you're up at a campfire. At a distance, oh, it feels good. This is nice. Oh, I like this. Oh, yeah, that's nice and toasty. But what happens when you get closer? It starts burning, doesn't it? The closer you get, the more uncomfortable it gets. And what's getting uncomfortable? My flesh. But why? Because it's starting to burn. And I don't want it to burn. That hurts. I don't like that. So I'm going to back away a little bit. But if we want to draw close to Him, what are we expecting to happen? The closer we get to Him, folks, the more uncomfortable it's going to get. That is to our flesh. Because flesh and blood does not inherit the kingdom of heaven. Those who are led of the Spirit of God, these are the sons of God. And so with that, if we were to break the word Corban into two words, kufresh is the predominant sound in the verb that means to call, kara, to call. And bet nun is the word ben, son. And so embedded in the word Corban is this message. A sacrificial offering intended to be consumed on the flame so that I might draw near to God. Embedded in that is to call a son. You see, to as many as received Him, He gave them the power to become sons of God. The ability is there, but it doesn't necessarily mean the fruition is there. Because some people, the closer they get to a fire and it starts getting uncomfortable, they back off a little bit. True? But if we really want to get so close to Him that we are a son, what would it infer? That we are willing to allow this flesh to be consumed by this all-consuming fire. So, how many of you want to be sons? Then, ladies and gentlemen, then we should not be surprised if it gets uncomfortable. Now, again, what's going to be uncomfortable is this flesh. And that, I believe, is going back to something we said earlier. I understand that many of you probably already been through horrendous things. I'm not discounting that. But the Messiah says that the times, if we are living in the end of days, that the times in which we live, there are things coming that the world has never seen before. And it's going to be unlike anything anyone's in this room is yet to see. And so what I'm saying is that all the things that we may have already gone through, as difficult as those things were, might not compare to some of the things that we may still have to contend with. Now, I know that everybody wants to jump up and run the aisles and shout and all that now. But I'm just trying to be faithful to what the Messiah is teaching us in the Word. Now, we have the promise that though we walk through the fire, we're not going to get burned. Those three Hebrews, what did they tell Nebuchadnezzar? Our God is well able to deliver us out of your hand, but if not, we still won't bow down. Let me suggest to you that in that statement, that is evidence of people who have died to their flesh. Because if they're willing to perish in a fire rather than to bow down and to transgress the commandment, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. If they're not going to be willing to transgress that commandment, even to the point of death, then I'm submitting to you, these are people whose flesh has died away. And so when they are cast into the fire, we know what happens, right? They come out of the fire, and they don't even smell like smoke. So we have that promise, ladies and gentlemen, that though we walk through the fire, He is going to be with us in that. I guess what I'm trying to say is He's just trying to determine who is willing to get into that fire. Who is willing to allow their flesh to be consumed in that fire so that He can join them there in that fire so that they can come through that fire not even smelling like smoke. Now that's real easy for us to say, oh yeah, I'm ready to do it, let's go. Today. Right? But I could say this for myself, I'm not there yet. And I'm sorry, I haven't met many people who are. And so you know what He's doing? He's bringing circumstances our way, individually, families, fellowships, countries. He's bringing circumstances our way so that we can learn to contend with these things, that we can learn to set our face on Him and not on these things that are going on around us, to not turn to the right nor turn to the left, but keep going straight. And even when we get to that little opening and we see that there's another obstacle in our way, not to lose heart and not to fall into this thing of, oh, were there no graves in Egypt that you brought us out here to die? Oh, isn't this what I told you? Just leave me alone. I would serve Pharaoh, but no, you had to bring me out here. I know that none of us would ever do that. I am convinced that He is trying to prepare us for those types of things. How much time do we have? Who's in charge? Where are we at on time? 20 minutes. Okay. All right. Well, then I will share this and then we'll probably go ahead and try to bring it to a close. I'm going to share with you a personal experience, and I do this with a lot of trepidation. You know, I don't get a kick out of sharing personal experiences. And I don't know if that's a strength or a flaw. I don't know. It's just who I am. I don't get a kick out of it. And I don't get a kick out of sharing things about me that would, to some, seem like I'm trying to solicit some kind of sympathy or empathy. What I'm about to tell you, that's not the reason. What I'm about to tell you is, though I feel like the Lord was using it to share with me something and let me see something that is personal and involves my family first and foremost, I am coming to the place that I feel like the Father is showing me that it's not just for my immediate family, but that it also has effects for my family. Okay? So what I want to share with you, I do this with that in mind. And the point in all of this would be that I believe that the adversary, well, we all know that the adversary has one objective: to steal, kill, and destroy. And don't you understand, and I'm sure you believe, that if he could destroy everybody in this room right now outright, he would have already done it. Do you believe that? So the fact that you and I are here tells me what? He doesn't have the power to do it. He does not have the authority to do it. Going back to Exodus, when the Lord passed through the land and he saw the blood on the door, he said, when I see the blood, it will be a sign between you and me, and I will pass over you and will not permit the destroyer to enter therein. So then, folks, once again, if he could destroy us outright, he would have already done it. But that he has not already done it is indicative of the fact he doesn't have the power to do it. But here's what he can do. If we let our guard down and we leave the back door open, so to speak, and leave him a way to get a toehold into our lives, he can, if we let him, destroy us from within. I don't have time to show you in the Scripture how this works, but just consider this. Who was in the midst of the garden in Genesis 3 who wasn't supposed to be there? And who was supposed to have kept him out? Adam. Who sowed tares in the midst of the wheat? An enemy has done this. But how was he able to do it? Because men slept. So if we leave the back door open, then he is able to get a toehold in. And if he gets a toehold, he's going to try his very best to steal, kill, and destroy. So understand that, number one. Number two, understand the whole reason the Messiah came was not to break relationship, but to bring these two and make them one. And so it only makes sense if the Messiah came and died that the two should become one. What do you think the adversary's top priority is? To keep the two from becoming one, right? But he doesn't have the power to do it externally, so how's he going to try to do it? From within. Just another example, denominations. How many? 38,000 denominations. And most of them thinking that they have all cornered the market on the truth. And a lot of them won't speak to the other one because they say this and they don't say that, or they have music and they don't, and all these kind of bizarre things. I wonder who's behind that. You see, he doesn't have the power to destroy us externally, but he can get into the middle of us if we leave the door open. So his top priority, I would suggest to you, is to stop what the Messiah's top priority was. He doesn't want the two to become one. And so he tries to do it from within. And so I'm not the kind of person that sensationalizes, at least I don't believe I am, dreams and visions and things like that. I know that people have dreams, and I know that people have visions. I don't have them every night. You know? Some people have dreams every night, and they think that's something to it, and some people have visions all the time. I don't. But occasionally I've had a dream, and I knew that there was something to it. So I'm going to give you the highlights, but to make a very long story short, my family and I have gone through the worst year that I ever have. The worst year in the sense of relationships, family relationships, close family relationships. And more so than a disagreement, no, it's gut-wrenching, destructive type situations that seemingly just came out of nowhere. And it all started earlier this year, and it really reached, really come to a head this summer. A lot of it's still unresolved. And in June of this year, I was really restless, thinking about all these different things, and really kind of just stressed out over it all, not really sure what to do or what could be done, what could be said, et cetera, et cetera. It was more than just one incident. It was more than just one relationship. It was multiple, and it was just overwhelming. And so I couldn't sleep, and my wife is the kind of woman that she needs her sleep. You know, she needs 8 hours at least, and if she doesn't get it the next morning, it's like, you know, so when I'm restless, it's just better for me to get up out of the bed and just go sleep on the couch, you know. Let her sleep. So I did, and I went and I lay down on the couch, and the only way I know how to really describe this is I'm laying down on the couch, and I'm in the dark, and I'm looking at the room, and at some point I fell asleep. And when I fell asleep, I knew I was asleep, my eyes were shut, and yet I could still see the room exactly as it was. You know how in some dreams everything looks kind of abstract and ethereal and kind of weird and all that kind of, it wasn't like that. It was just like the room was before I closed my eyes, except now my eyes are closed. Except there's a problem. There's something in the room with me. And it's saying all these vile things of what it's going to do, et cetera, me, my family, this one, that one. And I am terrified. And I'm trying to call out to God, and I can't get, nothing's coming out. And so when nothing's coming out, and I know that if I could just call on the name, that everything would be okay, but I can't get anything out of my throat. And it's like this, whatever it was, realized that and started taunting me about it. And as it's taunting me, it's getting closer and closer to my ear. I know y'all, some of you are going to think I'm crazy, but whatever, I'm leaving tomorrow. Anyway. But this thing gets right up in my ear, and it's saying all these vile, vicious, and antagonistic things, and I'm still trying to crawl out or cry out. And then it took a finger or a nail, or sometimes I even want to think a claw. I'm not really sure. But it started up under here, and it started trying to cut into my side. And you talking about petrified, and I'm trying still to call out, and I can't get anything out of my throat. And as it comes down like this, it got close to my side, and I could feel the hair on its arm. But it wasn't the hair like most people have on their arm. It was like an animal. I mean, I thought, was that a dog? Is it what is it? What did you say? As that thing comes to the end of what it's trying to do, I finally cry out. And I come out of that sleep, and my heart is beating out of my chest, and I'm like, Lord God, what is going on? And I mean, immediately, God visited me and brought me peace and brought me comfort and spoke to me. I'm not going to tell you what he said, but it just brought comfort to me. And I did end up going back to sleep. And the next morning I get up and I tell my wife, and I said, here's what happened. And again, I need to make this short, but I said, I feel like what Father's showing me is he was trying to cut into my side. The enemy's going to try to come between you and me. You know, the woman was taken out of the man's side. I said, the enemy's going to try to come between you and me. And there were these familial relationships that had the potential to come between me and my wife. And I said, we cannot let that happen. We got to resist this at all costs. We cannot let him come between you and me, because the whole idea is man and wife are supposed to be what? The two becoming one. And I thought that was basically the extent of it until July, a month later, when something happened, one of my children, that, to spare you all the gory details, took our lives and spun it around and ripped our guts out to the point that we, for 3 days, we could hardly speak to one another. Not because we were mad with one another, just because we didn't know what to say. And we just walked around in a daze, and all we could do was cry. And then I was sharing this dream with the lady that works with me, and when I told her about the arm, she said, Esau. Because who was Esau? But he's the one who thought the birthright and the blessing should be his. He was in confederacy, by the way, with Ishmael, who thought the birthright and the blessing should be his. And so Esau represents the one, if I can't have it, then no one is going to have it. He is the one, and his descendants are the ones. And if you will allow me to put it this way, that spirit is the one that does not want Israel, God's people, to possess the blessing and the birthright that was given to them through their father Abraham. But do you know how he operates? When Jacob is coming back into the land, this is in our Torah portion this week. When Jacob's coming back into the land, who's coming to meet him? Esau. And is he bringing his wife and kids? No. He's coming with 400 men. Doesn't sound like he's got the best of intentions. And yet Jacob has prayed, God deliver me out of his hand. He's met the man who has the face of God, gets in this wrestling match, gets his hip pulled out of joint, gets his name changed to Israel, walks over into the land, walking differently than before. Never walk the same way again, because that's the way Israel's supposed to walk. Israel's supposed to walk different from everybody. But anyway, when he comes to meet with Esau, he has divided his company into two. You remember? He divided his company into two. And why? Because one goes one way, one goes the other. Because if Esau meets up with them, these will escape. But do you think he's intending for the two to remain two? No. What is he going to do? He's going to make the two one, isn't he? But it's in this face of this adversity, in this trial, that this is all happening. And so he's divided his company into two. He crosses over into the land, and he puts the concubines with their children out in front, and then he puts Leah and her children out in front, and then he puts Rachel and Joseph at the back. And he bows himself 7 times. And finally, the Bible tells us that Esau ran to him, and he gave him a big bear hug, and he fell on his neck and kissed him. And they were weeping and all. And, you know, for the sake of time, let me just kind of condense all this. The conversation goes something like this. Well, hey, brother, it's good, man. Cool. Who are all these with you? All your kids? Oh, hey, how you doing? Hey, let's take a trip. You come with me. Let's go on. Let's talk. Let's share old times. And Jacob says, nah. You know, my animals are real tired, and we need to rest up a little bit. Why don't you go on ahead, and we'll catch up with you in Mount Seir. Now, if you read it, Jacob never did catch up with Esau in Mount Seir. I wonder why. And I wonder why that after being separated for 20 years, these two brothers are weeping and hugging and all this kind of stuff. And why is it that Jacob doesn't feel comfortable in sitting down and getting caught up on old times and rebuilding this relationship? This is debatable, but there are those who say that when Esau embraced him, it was an embrace that basically said, you remember what I told you, but when you left for Syria, that after Dad dies, I'm going to kill you? And guess what? I'm still going to kill you. But I'm not going to do it out here in the open in front of everybody. There are some people who say that when he kissed him on the neck, it wasn't a genuine, heartfelt kiss, but it was more like the kiss that Judas gave the Messiah. Betrayal. And then there's some people who say, because of the Hebrew words that are used there, that when he fell on his neck, to kiss him. It wasn't really a kiss, but that he bit him on his neck. Any way you want to look at it, it becomes very clear that Esau and Jacob don't reconcile. In fact, the next time they meet, they're burying Isaac. And you remember what Esau said? After Dad dies, I'm going to kill you. But here's something else you also notice in the text. That when Jacob says, no, we're going to hang back, rest up a little bit, and all this kind of stuff, and Esau says something like this. Well, I'll tell you what, let me just leave some of my crew with you. And Jacob more or less says, what? What for? Why? What would be the purpose of that? But here's what's really interesting. Apparently that's what happened. Because the text later on talks about Jacob traveling with his family and all who were with him. When they go down into Egypt, guess what? It's all his family and those who were with him. And there are people who believe, and I'm one of them, that those that were with him was Esau sown in their midst. You know, just like tares are sown in the midst of. So here's what I came to believe that the Father was showing me, my family, and now I believe all of us collectively. The adversary does not have the power and ability to destroy us outright. Why? If the blood's on the door, then we have a promise that he will pass over us and will not permit the destroyer to enter therein. Right? But if we were to leave the door open, and in a way, if you will, let him come into the midst of us, then you know what he can do? He can begin the process of trying to steal, kill, and destroy, but from within. And that Esau is representative of that spirit. In fact, Esau, a cognate word is chasaf. Chasaf means tear. Esau is representative of the tear. And so I said all that to say this. In the days, the weeks, the months, the years ahead, we need to understand what the Messiah's objective is, what our Father's purpose is. He is wanting to bring the two and make them one. So then if we know what the Father's purpose is, we know what the adversary's objective is. And you know what that is? To make sure the two don't become one. As a matter of fact, in Zechariah 5, you will see that immediately after the prophet sees the menorah flanked on either side by the two olive branches, which we've already talked. And what do we see in the very next chapter? Immediately after he sees that, he sees a flying scroll going through the air, and he gives the dimensions of this flying scroll, and he says, this is the curse that goes out through the whole earth. And in Hebrew, what it says is, this is ha'alah that goes out through the whole earth. In other words, Allah goes out through the earth. Why do you think Allah is going out through the earth at the same time the two olive branches are flanking the menorah? Maybe he's wanting to stop it. And so the adversary wants to keep these relationships apart. And so if he at the top is wanting to keep the two from being one, then guess what? He's going to try to bring division all through these relationships down here that filter down. You understand what I'm trying to say here? But he can't do it from the outside, so how does he do it? From the inside. So we have got to be aware of that. We've got to be cognizant of the wiles and the methodology of the adversary, ladies and gentlemen. And when we're going through these difficult circumstances and our flesh is screaming and hollering, that might be the best time he would think to try to do something. Which just means that we have to even be more diligent to guard against those things. Which means we have to be more diligent to guard against giving in to our flesh more so than giving in to our Father's purposes and will. I hope this is making sense here. So, let me go, I guess we're kind of running short on the time here on the DVD. Go ahead. All right. But if you don't remember anything we talked about today, this is what I want you to remember. That there's no way that you or I, there's no way that we collectively are going to be able to fulfill our Father's purposes for, the reason we're here, if we're focused on me, or focused on you, or focused on our stuff, or focused on our troubles, and focused on our trials. I realize that we're still living in this body, and I realize that we're still living in this temporal world, and I realize that, we have to deal with stuff. And I'm not up here saying I've arrived and I've eclipsed all. No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm telling you what I'm learning. I'm sharing with you what I'm going through in the hopes that maybe it might be helpful to somebody else. But I know that if we're going to fulfill our Father's purpose as individuals, as families, as fellowships, as a people, then we're going to have to learn to stop looking at everything that makes us feel bad as being bad. We might need to start looking at some of these bad things as the Father's way of bringing about something good.